All right, let's get right into it. If you're looking to build a truly world-class energy management program, you have to get past just, switching off the lights. It all comes down to two foundational pillars. First, you need rock-solid energy accounting. And second, you need insightful performance benchmarking. So today, we're going to break down how these two pillars really create a strategic framework for success.
And why is this so important? Well, because the potential upside here is just huge. We are not talking about small, marginal gains. A really aggressive, data-driven program can commonly deliver savings of 30%. And for some organizations, through deep retrofits, that number can shoot up to 50 or even 70%. Now, that's a figure that gets noticed. It moves from the utility manager's desk straight into the boardroom.
So here's the game plan for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the strategic imperative, the why behind all this. Then we'll dig into our two pillars, mastering energy accounting and leveraging performance benchmarking. And finally, we'll pull it all together and see how to integrate them for a cycle of continuous improvement.
Okay, let's start with the big picture, the strategic imperative. This is really about changing how we think about energy management. We have to move beyond seeing it as just an operational chore for cutting costs. The real goal is to turn it into a powerful tool for competitive advantage.
So what's driving all this? Well, it really boils down to three major global priorities that pretty much every organization is grappling with. From an environmental angle, it's all about shrinking our impact on climate change. Economically, it's about slashing those operational costs to stay competitive. And from a security standpoint, it's about becoming less dependent on volatile, often imported energy sources.
All right, let's get into our first pillar, mastering energy accounting. Think of this as the absolute bedrock of your entire program. This is where you take raw data, your utility bills, your meter reads, and you transform it into business intelligence that you can actually use. Without this, honestly, everything else is just guesswork.
At its core, energy accounting is a system for tracking consumption and costs. But its real power, and what experts say is second only to top management commitment, is its role as an early warning system. It gives you the hard data to stay in control, it flags when things are going off the rails, and it's the main trigger for taking corrective action.
Now, it's really important to understand that not all accounting systems are created equal. They exist on this spectrum of sophistication. Level 1, that's your basic metering and reporting. Level 2 gets a bit more granular. You start allocating energy to different cost centers. Level 3 brings in historical standards, so you can start doing variance reports. And then you have level 4, the top tier, which uses engineered models to set standards. And I should say, very few companies are actually operating at this level.
And this gets to an absolutely crucial point. The real game changer is when you stop treating energy like this big, fuzzy overhead cost. The key is to push those costs down to the managers who can actually control them. Suddenly, when a production manager sees energy on their own P&L statement, they have a very direct, very personal incentive to act. This was actually the secret sauce behind General Motors' incredibly successful energy accounting system.
Okay, so accounting tells you what you're using, but that data by itself, it kind of exists in a vacuum. And that brings us to our second pillar, leveraging performance benchmarking. This is the practice that gives all that data context. It's what answers the fundamental question, how well are we actually doing? When we talk about benchmarking, you're going to hear about two key metrics. First is the Energy Use Index, or EUI. This measures the raw energy you're using per square meter. It's a pure indicator of performance. On the other side, you've got the Energy Cost Index, or ECI, which measures cost performance. The big disadvantage with ECI, though, is that it includes your energy rates, and that's a variable you can't control that changes all the time. So for a true apples-to-apples comparison of performance, EUI is almost always the better metric.
And there are a few different ways to go about this. You can benchmark internally, comparing your own facilities to each other, or you can benchmark externally against some best-in-class standard out there. It's also really important to know the difference between practice benchmarking, which is a more qualitative look at what people are doing, and energy benchmarking, which is the hard, quantitative, data-driven comparison of actual performance.
The benefits here are huge, and they're both tactical and strategic. Benchmarking is what moves an organization from guessing to knowing. It pinpoints your biggest savings opportunities, it helps you set realistic goals, and it validates your progress on projects. And at a higher level, it informs your big capital decisions and helps you meet reporting mandates. It really is the engine that drives continuous improvement.
And now for the capstone. This is where we bring it all together.
Integrating for continuous improvement. This is where we fuse those two pillars, breaking them out of their data silos and creating this powerful strategic cycle where accounting and benchmarking are constantly feeding each other.
So here's how that integrated cycle actually works. First, you use your benchmarks to set your goals and strategy. Then, you use your accounting data to identify specific energy management opportunities, or EMOs. From there, you use what are called Energy Performance Indicators, or EnPIs, to measure your performance against your baseline. That feeds into monitoring and targeting, where you use techniques like CUSUM analysis to stay on track. And finally, the whole cycle culminates in measurement and verification, or M&V, where you prove the actual savings you've achieved.
So let's talk about those MIPs for a second. These are basically your core quantitative yardsticks. And they can be anything, really, from a simple UI for an entire building all the way to a complex regression model for one specific industrial process. But no matter what they are, their purpose is always the same: to track your improvement against a baseline you've already established.
And this right here, this brings us to the final, absolutely critical connection. The whole practice of measurement and verification, the process of actually proving your savings, is built entirely on this foundation. Without accurate accounting data to know what you used and a solid benchmarking baseline to compare it against, any M&V protocol, even the international gold standard IPMVP, is basically worthless. You can't verify savings if you don't know where you started.
So we'll end with this thought, something for you to take back to your own program. Take a hard look at how you use your data. Is it just a historical record sitting in a file cabinet somewhere, something you look at once a year? Or is it a living, breathing asset that is actively driving your strategy, identifying new opportunities, and proving your value to the organization? Because the answer to that question is what separates the good programs from the great ones.